Welcome to Ayumu's BS Seminar. I'm your seminar leader, Ayumu. With Battlespirit Saga almost reaching her first year anniversary, there are plenty of cards already introduced in the game. Being an actual competitive card game, most people are focused on the power levels of the cards. Some enjoy the lore behind the cards, wondering what would happen to their favorite cards, and predict what would happen later on in the story and subsequently what cards will release along with it. But then there's another aspect of the game which I think a lot of people miss out on, and that's the design behind the cards, whether it's about their effects or their appearances or the artist's choice of aesthetic. So today here are 15 facts and trivia about Battlespirit Saga. Let's get this started. Starting off with the icon of the game, Sigma Nova. We all know that he serves in a very important role in the lore, and you should know by now that Nova is a spirit from the original Japanese game. But out of all the cards, why did the developers choose Nova to be the icon and starting point? The answer is simple. Nova is very popular in the Japanese game. To pull into details, Nova was first introduced in the 9th set of the Japanese game, used by the protagonist of the anime series at that time, Bashindan. It was 2009, everyone was a kid, and Bandai massively improved their CGIs. And who wouldn't like a dragon descending from the sky at the most pivotal moment of the plot? Not to mention, Dan obtained his copy of Sigma Nova in a heartfelt moment where it was given by a loving character who had to sacrifice himself for the greater good. For a card game anime, everything was pretty damn good. You also have to remember that Nova was the first card in the game that could heal you back to 5 lives, and also the first card in the game to have 4 separate effects. You can imagine how OP he was back then. This card's popularity exploded. After the release of Set 9, the official held a popularity vote, and Nova got first place in card effects, illustration, and overall design. In 2012, it still remained as the 6th most favorite card of all time. In May 2013, it was voted as the 2nd most favorite rare card, and in the winter of the same year, it was voted as the 3rd coolest spirit. In February 2022, 2 of its illustrations were in the top 3 most popular artworks, and in July 2023, it was voted as the coolest spirit as well as the most memorable spirit of all time. And even more, Nova as a character was remade at least 7 times as new cards. You bet why the Saga developers chose him as the icon. The name of the ominous Medoc actually has an interesting origin. Her name is based on the Medoc wine, a kind of red wine produced in Medoc, a region in the southwest of France. As you might also notice, Medoc bears the title Grand Underworld Trio, meaning that she has 2 other companions. One of them is called Saint-Emilion, based on the Saint-Emilion wine produced in the city of Saint-Emilion, also in France, and the other is Baroque Bordeaux, based on the Bordeaux wine produced in, you guessed it, the city of Bordeaux, west of Saint-Emilion and south of Medoc. Both Saint-Emilion and Baroque Bordeaux aren't in Saga yet, and I await the time of their arrival. The king snake Quetzalcoatl, while it doesn't have very impressive effects, does have an impressive motive. Its name comes from Quetzalcoatl, a deity in Aztec culture and literature. People who also play Fate's Grand Order would know this deity very well. Its name literally means Quetzal feather serpent, with Quetzal being a significant species of birds in South America, hence the 2 white wings on its back. Quetzalcoatl represented a lot of things in the Aztec culture, but most importantly, he was a creation deity, having contributed to essentially the creation of mankind. While there aren't any proven links between Quetzalcoatl and the symbolism of lotus, I believe that Takehito Aoi, the artist of the card, included the lotus in the illustration as a symbol of rebirth, a process which Quetzalcoatl has gone through in the Aztec mythology. The Dark World 7 has various origins in terms of the designs. In Saga, as of the release of this video, there are only 2 of them, with pandemonium being a change on the word pandemonium, usually meaning disorder or chaos. The word originates from John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost, being the name of the capital of hell. As such, the word also partly originates from the Greek word daimon, meaning demon. With the whole word meaning all demon place. On the other hand, Belphegor takes on the name from Belphegor, an archdevil in Christian demonology, and is the chief demon of sloth in the 7 deadly sins. Interestingly, Belphegor was also featured in the aforementioned Paradise Lost. If you've noticed, the purple color has an archetypal spirit with the title The Dark Knights. No, it's not related to Batman. So far we have 6 of them in Saga, including Bors, Lamorak, Florence, Mordred, Palomides, and Agrafel. Hearing the name Mordred, one can more or less realize that these are the Knights of the Round Table who served under King Arthur in the Arthurian legend. In the Japanese game, so far there are 17 Dark Knights with different names, with the newest one literally released a few weeks ago. Of course, King Arthur is also in the game as so there's Arthur, so he will also likely be introduced into Saga as well. As for the rest of the Knights, well, even up to this day, there are still debates going around about how many knights were actually at the round table, ranging from 100 to 1600. So I guess it really depends on how dedicated the developers are at supporting this archetype. You may have been curious, if Odin's name also contains the word Type X, does that mean there are other versions of Odin? Well, as a matter of fact, yes, and Type X isn't Odin's original version. Originally, the machine's name is simply called Odin, and is the first ever white X rare in the Japanese game. Type X was actually Odin's second form. I don't know why the developers decided to release Type X first, but here we are. If you haven't noticed already, let me tell you right now. Table Rex actually runs on wheels, his feet don't touch the ground at all. Pegasión, according to the original Japanese name, is actually pronounced as Pegasione. Also, Pegasione actually has an upgraded form called Pegasione Costume. Costume was specifically designed by the voice actor Hikaru Midorikawa, who has voiced for Pegasus Koga from the Saint Seiya Omega series, as well as for Hiro Yui, the pilot of Gundam Wing Zero from the Gundam Wing series. As such, the concept of Pegasione Costume is a literal combination of Pegasione, whose original motif is the Pegasus constellation, and Gundam Wing Zero. What's even better is that the illustration of Pegasione Costume was done by Naochika Morishita, one of the most prominent artists for Gundam. The existence of Michaela in Saga may not have been very impactful, but as most people might have been educated already, her original card in the Japanese game, in which her name was Mikafa, was one of, if not the most broken cards in the game. Being able to maintain a level 2 with only 2 cards, and instead of being limited to the attack step only, the user could freely use any magic cards at any time. Interestingly, during the English release of that time, the English version of Mikafa did have either attack step limitation, which was different to the Japanese version, and it was confirmed by the developers that the Japanese version was misprinted, resulting in what she is now. Mikafa was the first ever card to enter the list of limited to 1 copy per deck in May 2009, and in the 1st of January 2010, the first ever card to be banned in Battle Spirits. In May 2022, it also became the first, and as of this recording, the only card to be unbanned. Mikafa has also become one of the main reasons why developers has been very wary with yellow, fearing that they might make the color broken again. And seeing how Michaela in Saga requires 4 cards to be at level 2, as well as needing the soul card on her, I can see that the PTSD has been carried over. Officially, Lute's name isn't pronounced as Lute, nor is it pronounced as Lute, but actually pronounced as Luto. While the aesthetic design of Luto is definitely based on a Chinese dragon, the origin of its name is unknown. I can only tell you that the real part of the name is the Japanese pronunciation of the word dragon. Lin is based on the Chinese mythical beast Qilin, generally having Chinese dragon-like features like a head with antlers, eyes with thick eyelashes, manes that always flow upward, and beards. Depending on each depiction, a Qilin will also be partly or fully scaled, obviously not the case with Lin in Saga. Qilin can also be depicted in different colors, but most commonly as gold, the color which Lin is using. Here's a funny fact about the real world. In the 15th century, a Chinese explorer visited East Africa and brought back all kinds of exotic animals, among them a pair of giraffes. The Chinese emperor mistook the giraffes as the Qilins. The impression has been so strong that even till this day, the word for giraffe in both Japanese and Korean is the same word for Qilin. Everyone loves or hates hippocampal, but do you know what it actually is? Well, I admit I didn't until I tried to look something up. If you manage to associate the name with the inside of the human brain, then you're halfway there. Hippocampal is based on the mythical creature Hippocampus, typically depicted as having the upper body of a horse and the lower body of a fish. In English, the creature is also often referred to as a seahorse. The name is also used as the scientific name for the species of fish we commonly refer to as, well, seahorses. The reason why the organ inside our brain is called hippocampus, or actually hippocampi because we have two of them, is simply because its shape looks like a seahorse. Yep, that's it. Do you know that all Pantone cards were drawn by a single artist? The name on the internet is called Popolucha. They're freelance illustrator most known for working on covers for light novels and artworks for card games. Battle Spirits alone uses, I kid you not, at least 170 artworks from them. They've been drawing for Battle Spirits since the beginning, with Pantone being their first artwork in the game. Besides cute animals, they're also very good at portraying human characters in shoujo manga style. My favorite human character from them has to be Zulu, and I hope she'll be added into Saga as well. I left a link to their personal Twitter at the top right corner and also in the description. Check them out. We all know what each of the 6 colors does, and it's generally obvious how they oppose each other. Red represents attack, while white represents defense. Green represents resource gain, while purple represents resource depletion. So all that's left are yellow and blue. Do you know how they oppose each other? The answer is, we don't actually know. In the original game, yellow and blue were the 2 latest colors introduced to the game, unlike in Saga where it was green and blue. As such, naturally the 2 colors were to be paired up together like the previous 4. The funny part is that even Bandai themselves were confused with how to do this. However, as the game developed, it began to be clearer. The most basic way to see this is that yellow focuses on the abuse of hand resources, while blue focuses on the restriction of hand resources. As the magic focus color, yellow depends a lot on keeping their hand size huge, so to leave themselves with a wide range of choices in terms of magic. As one probably also has experience with Flagellum in Saga, yellow doesn't necessarily require a huge field. In most cases, a single Flagellum, or with just the additional Michaela on board, is already enough to deal massive damage to the opposing field. On the other hand, blue is bound to have a small hand size, hence the theme of filter rather than just raw draw, as the color focuses on controlling with field presence, especially with Nessuses, and attempts to limit the use of cards from hand on the opponent. There are also many little things to indicate that the 2 colors oppose each other. Blue is prominent with effects of raising levels, while yellow counters it by treating everything at the lowest level. Unblockable effects are also more prominent in yellow, so blue becomes the main color to counter unblockable effects, such as destroying them directly. However, it's such a mess. The developers had to think things through before they start introducing anything. And for our final fact and trivia of the day, let's look at Sigwell's best friend, Tokiwa. Unlike Nova, Tokiwa is actually an original Saga spirit. Despite being an important figure in the lore, surprisingly there isn't much information about him. From reading the flavor text, I've gathered the following points. 1. Tokiwa was the main contributor in the second invasion of the Void Lords, having defeated at least 3 of them. 2. It's implied that Tokiwa can manipulate the power of fire, even if it was done through the backup of Star Dragons, though one can also argue that the Fire Phoenix in question was actually Fenrix. And 3. It's implied that Tokiwa has eaten the fruit of life to gain immortality. But that's kinda really it. My research has only been done up to set 3, as at this point the set 4 lore is still largely incomplete. And honestly, I think what I've said so far is pretty much general knowledge to most Saga players. So just like most of my previous points in this video, I want to shed light on his design instead. Later in the lore, Tokiwa will become part of the 4 Great Sages, while the others being Frost Tiger, Genbu, and Silkworm. This concept, as per usual, isn't completely made up by Bandai, but rather an aspect of the long and historical East Asian cultural sphere. Its depiction dating as far back as 5300 BC. Among Asian spiritual understandings, there has always been a belief that the 4 directions, aka North, East, South and West, seasons of the year, emotions, virtues and many more, are represented by 4 sacred beasts, them being the Asa Dragon of the East, the Vermilion Bird of the South, the White Tiger of the West, and the Black Tortoise of the North, often with the aforementioned Qilin as the center. One interesting thing to point out is that the Vermilion Bird in the mythology is a separate being to Feng Huang, which is often considered the Chinese phoenix. However, due to their similar appearances, they're often mistaken as the same being. On that part, I'm glad that Bandai has made the distinction by naming the other big chicken as Feng Huang. Though now that I mention it, there's a distaste in my mouth knowing that Tokiwa is still called a phoenix. And last but not least, Tokiwa's name, well, Tokiwa, is most likely Japanese. With the Japanese language being as it is, the name can have several implications depending on the spelling in Japanese. Obviously, since we haven't received a proper Japanese name for Tokiwa, I can only speculate that it's actually a pun from the developers, as the word usually means evergreen in English, but at the same time, it can also mean eternal peace. Very fitting for the role of Tokiwa in the lore, I would say. Woo! The last one was a long one, but here are 15 facts and trivia about, I don't know, the card designs in Battlefield Saga. To be honest, I would have gone for some more technical facts, but I suppose at this point of the game, the facts are too simple to depict anything interesting from card interactions. Besides, my hobby has always been about researching mythologies and stories anyway, so this kind of nerdy video is actually right up my alley. As usual, if you like this kind of video, remember to like and subscribe, and if there are any cards you specifically want me to talk about, comment down below, and maybe I'll make a second trivia video. This is Ayumu and today's seminar is over. Goodbye!